Okay. So like I had mentioned today, we're doing chicken piccata meatballs. So this is somewhat of an easier way, I guess, to make chicken piccata, which is convenient. So the first thing I just want to mention is this recipe does involve a lot of stuff using your hands. If you don't like the feeling of raw meat or anything in your hands, for most of it, you can use a spatula or a spoon instead. The only thing that you might probably would have to use your hands for is when we're actually forming the meatballs, but you can always wear gloves too to protect your hands. And then the other thing about handling raw meat is if you're not wearing gloves, which is totally fine, you just want to make sure that every time you touch raw meat before you go to touch something else, you want to make sure your hands are washed. That way we're not cross-contaminating anything with that raw chicken. All right. So we can get started on making our meatballs. The first thing we're going to do, we have a nice bowl here. So we're going to start adding everything to this bowl. Easy enough first step. We're just going to add our ground chicken into the bowl. So I have my package of ground chicken here. Just going to slice it open with a knife. You could use a scissor, something, whatever you have on hand. And I'm just going to dump it right into the bowl and throw out that packaging right away too. All right, so we've got that in there. For anyone just joining us, we just got started. So the only thing we have done so far is we added our ground chicken into a nice sized bowl. This is the bowl that we're going to be using to cook, or not cook, to mix our meatballs. So once everyone has their ground chicken in their bowl, just give me a thumbs up and we'll keep adding the ingredients. All right, from what I can see, it looks like everyone's good. So the next thing we're going to add is a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. So we're just going to take a 1/4 cup measurement. I have pecorino cheese, which is pretty much the same thing. So I'm just going to use that. And I'm just going to take my 1/4 cup, just scoop it in there. And I'm going to use the back of my knife to just kind of level it out. We're going to put that right into the bowl with the chicken. And then once everyone has their Parmesan in the bowl, another thumbs up, we'll keep going on. All right, awesome. Looks like everyone's doing good. Okay, so then the next thing is 2/3 of a cup of panko breadcrumbs. If you don't have panko, that's totally fine. You can use regular breadcrumbs. I could not find panko at the store the other day, so I just have my Italian seasoned breadcrumbs. It says Italian style, which is totally fine. So I have my 1/3 measuring cup.
You said 2/3, right?
2/3, correct, Enrique. So I have my 1/3 measuring cup. I'm just going to scoop it in there twice. We've got 1. And we've got 2. And the breadcrumbs help to bind the meatballs so that way they're not super, super sticky and they stick together when we cook them in the pan. And then once everyone has their breadcrumbs in, give me one more thumbs up. We've got one more thing to add to this bowl before we start doing some chopping. Looks like everyone's good. So we're just going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I know the recipe I sent out said 1/12 by accident. That was a typo. So we're just going to do a 1/2 teaspoon. I know I've said it before, with salt and pepper, I tend to not really measure and just kind of use my eyes. So for a half teaspoon, I would just take a little pinch, just go like that. If you want to use a measuring spoon, by all means, please do. But just a little trick. A half teaspoon is usually about a pinch. So now we have Parmesan, breadcrumbs, and salt into our bowl with our ground chicken. Once everyone has all of that in there, give me one more thumbs up and we'll keep on going. All right, looks like everyone's doing well. The next thing that we are going to do is mince some garlic to add into the meatballs. So we need some for the meatballs and some for our sauce later. So that's why it says 7 cloves. I have 4 on hand right now, fresh, and then I have some frozen. So I'm going to use the frozen for the sauce later. But for now, we're going to mince all 7 cloves. You can, if you have a garlic press, you can use that. I'm just going to use my knife today. One less thing to clean. So I'm just using the flat side of my knife in order to help get the skin off. You place your garlic clove on the cutting board and you carefully press down. It'll crack it a little bit and the skin can come off really easily. Or you can always just cut a little piece off and get the skin off from there. Or so it's kind of flat. And then I always like to cut off the root end just to make sure there's no hard parts in there. So this little root part right here on the end, I usually just cut those off really quick. So let me do that. Just as little bit as possible so that you don't lose all the garlic with it too. So I have my ends cut off. And if any of your garlic cloves look like they have a spot like this one, like that doesn't look very good, I'm just gonna slice that off. And the rest of it's still good to use. Yeah, so now on the inside, we're totally fine. So you have all your cloves of garlic on your cutting board. When we mince, we kind of just use our rocking motion until we get a nice small size. So I'm just gonna, it looks like I'm gonna slice, just using my rocking motion. And then I make sure everything's in the middle, and then you just kind of keep doing that. So you have your not cutting, your not dominant hand on top of the flat part of the knife here. That'll help keep it steady. And then you just keep going back and forth across your cutting board until you get some nice small pieces. And you can always stop and kind of get all the, sometimes it'll get stuck to the knife, so you can carefully brush it off back onto your cutting board and then keep going. Right, so I'm gonna do it one, we're getting there, but I think I'm gonna go once more. That's a good size. Right. And then for the meatballs, we need 4 of those cloves. And to save the rest for later. So if you have all 7 cloves on your cutting board, you want to just take what looks like a little more than half of that and put that into the meatball bowl. And then the rest we're going to use for the sauce later. Like I said, I didn't have 7 cloves of garlic. So if you're looking, you're like, why is Sophia putting all of her garlic into the bowl? I have frozen garlic that I'm going to use for the sauce later. Right. So once everyone has all of your garlic added into the bowl, give me one more thumbs up. For anyone who just joined us, we just finished up on step number 3 on the recipe. So we just minced our garlic and we added about 4 cloves to the bowl. And then next, I'm gonna skip to step 6 really quick, which is just one step ahead. So we can just juice the lemon before we start touching the meatball mix, just to make that a little bit easier. So we're gonna juice 2 lemons into a separate small bowl. If you have a juicer, you can always use a juicer too. And then I always tell everyone to get extra juice out of it, if you take this works for limes as well. You take your lemon or your lime, you put it on your cutting board and you roll it back and forth a little bit. That'll help release some of the juices so that you'll get the most out of it possible. So I'm going to do that to both my lemons. And then to get the most juice out of it too, instead of cutting the lemon right down the middle, I'm going to cut it just off center. So I have this slice right here. Then I'm going to turn the lemon, do the same thing on the other side. So I'm left with like a middle piece. These 2 pieces are going to squeeze so much easier than if you were to squeeze just the whole half. So then we have this like middle slice left. And it's like, okay, what can I do with that? Well, you can still do the same thing, just cut 2 sides. And then these 2 pieces are also going to squeeze really easily. So this way we're getting the most juice out of this lemon as possible. So I'm just going to do the same thing to the other lemon. So instead of cutting right down the middle, which I normally would, I'm going a little bit off center, turning the lemon around, doing the same thing. And then with my flat piece of lemon, just going to cut the 2 sides. And now these are all going to squeeze really nice and easy. If you have any visible seeds, you can always try and pop those out first so you don't have to fish them out later. But you can always use a spoon to get out any seeds once it's squeezed too, because sometimes they hide in there. But I'm just going to quickly take out whatever I can see. This one's got a lot of seeds in it. And then all of those lemon pieces we cut, we're just going to squeeze right into our small bowl we have. And that will hold all of our lemon juice. Right, so I just take this piece in my hand and squeeze it right over the bowl. And there's a lot that comes out, which is really convenient. And I actually learned this trick in a cooking class in the beginning of the summer. And ever since I did, that's how I squeeze my lemons now. So I have all my lemon pieces squeezed. I'm gonna set that little bowl aside and I'm just gonna clean off my cutting board really quick. But once everyone has all your lemons squeezed, your juice is in your bowl, give me a thumbs up. We'll start mixing our meatballs. Like we're almost ready. All right, does anyone need any more time to squeeze their lemons? All right, we got a couple people still juicing. Take as much time as you need. All right, everyone good? All right. So now we're gonna start mixing our meatballs. Like I said earlier, if you don't want to touch it right now, you don't have to. You can use a spatula to mix
So I'm
it.
gonna put this juice in a bowl, right?
You're gonna leave it for now. Put the juice aside. That's gonna be for our sauce later.
In the big bowl, right? The juice.
Nope, you don't want to pour it in the big bowl.
Oh.
We're gonna use
Can't
that later
pour
to
it in
make
a
the
big
sauce.
bowl for now, Dad. Okay.
Okay, so now we're gonna start mixing. If you want to use your hands, you can. If you don't, you can use a spatula for this part. Or you can put gloves on, that can protect your hands too. But before you start mixing, I want everyone to grab either, if you don't have a paper plate, you can just any plate. I use paper just because it's gonna touch the raw meat so I can throw it out. But because once we start forming the meatballs, we're gonna put them on a plate. So I wanna make sure that that is handy before we start touching the raw chicken. Let me just send the recipe. All right, someone in the chat had asked for the recipe, so I'm just sending the link really quick. So we have that. Okay, so I'm gonna use my hands. Normally I use gloves, I don't have any with me, so we're just gonna go for it. You just wanna mix the meatball mixture together until it looks nice and all the ingredients are combined. So if you have it, like, see, I have some breadcrumbs and stuff on the bottom, just making sure that I pick all of that up. Now I've got everything pretty much mixed together. So once you have a nice combined mixture, you can kind of form a whole ball out of it. It sticks together. That's what I was saying earlier about the breadcrumbs. They help bind it. So once it's all mixed, you can start rolling into balls. I know, I believe the recipe said around 2 tablespoons. I usually eye it, but you could always make them as small or as big as you want. So I just usually grab a little bit, roll it together in my 2 palms. I make this size. That's a good size. So once you have them formed, again, like I said, we have this plate right next to us. I'm just going to place it on the plate. That way my hands are only touching the chicken. And if they're not all perfectly the same size, that's also totally fine. You just want them to be around the same size so they cook evenly. You don't want one really, really small one and one really, really big one. That's all. And another thing you could always do too is if you didn't want to make a full recipe, but you wanted to just kind of have these on hand, you can always just make the meatballs and then freeze them. And then you can defrost them when you want to make the recipe and just cook the sauce, or you could use them for anything. You want like spaghetti and meatballs, you could use the meatballs for that. It's a pretty good basic meatball recipe. I think depending on what size they are, it usually makes about 12 to 14, I think. I've made this recipe a few times and I never end up with the exact same amount, but it usually gets somewhere within that range. If you find that any of them feel like they're like falling apart in your hand while you're rolling, if you just kind of squeeze the mixture together before you start rolling, it'll usually stick. You just kind of squeeze it back and forth and then start rolling. And then it should be nice and formed after that. All right, I'm rolling number 12 right now, so I'm probably going to get to just about 14 with this size. But again, it's going to depend on exactly what size your meatballs are. And sometimes if what's left, that last one is a little too big to be just one meatball, but it's too small to split into two, I'll split off a little bit and then look for the smallest one on my plate and then add it to that. And that usually does the trick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yep, I ended up with 14 exactly. So once you're done rolling your meatballs, you want to put your dirty chicken bowl right in the sink, and you want to make sure you wash your hands right away before you touch anything else. So that's what I'm going to do right now. All right. How is everyone doing? Do we have anyone still rolling? Or are we ready to start cooking? All right, let's look. Everyone's good. Oh, those look beautiful. All right, so now we want to get started cooking. So we're going to take a large saute pan or medium, like a good size saute pan. We're gonna bring it to medium high heat. Let me just move my computer over. So I've got my pan right here, coming up to medium high heat. While we wait for that, if anyone needs to clean the area up a little bit, make sure your hands are washed. And take time to do that. I'm gonna put away what we already used. For anyone who's just joining us now, we are getting ready to start cooking our meatballs. So we are on step number 9. We're about to add in some olive oil into our pan once it heats up. So I'm gonna give this another minute while it heats up. I'm just gonna wash my bowl that had the meatball mix in it really quick. All right, I got my chicken bowl cleaned. Our pan is heating. So what we're gonna do is add in 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So you just want to make sure the bottom of the pan is coated. That'll help the meatballs get a nice crust. And I'm just swirling it around so that it's covered by the whole bottom of the pan. And then what we're gonna do is carefully put our meatballs into our pan. You can use your hands and be very careful to make sure you don't touch the pan. You can also use something like tongs. One thing to note, if you are going to use something like tongs, you want to make sure you then wash them after, because they just touched that raw chicken. And then if you want to use those tongs again to flip them and then take the meatballs out of the pan, you want to make sure that we're not cross-contaminating. So if you're using tongs right now, just make sure you give them a wash right after we put them in. So I'm just going to line them up around the pan. We got some sizzling starting. All right, so they've all got a little room to cook. I'm gonna throw my plate out and then I'm gonna go wash my hands again since I just touched the raw chicken. All right, and we're gonna cook our meatballs on a few minutes each side. We just want to get them nice and crisp. They're not going to be fully cooked right now. That they're going to finish cooking in the sauce after we make the sauce later. I'm going to see how the bottom of my meatballs are looking. Oh yeah, we've got a nice crust. So I'm going to start flipping them. I'm just using a fork. Let them cook a few minutes more, flip them one more time. We just want to get a nice coat, nice sear on the outside. And then once they're in the sauce later, they will finish cooking. Obviously, we're going to cook these to freeze them. You would want to cook them fully through before you put them in the freezer. And if the bottom of your pan starts to look a little dry, like all the oil's gone, you can always add a little bit more. Anything that's stuck to the bottom is gonna come up when we cook the sauce, because we're gonna do the sauce in the exact same pan. I like to give them a little shake every once in a while too. We'll let these cook for a couple more minutes. I'm gonna get another plate handy. I'm gonna use a paper plate again since they are not fully cooked. And then when we remove them, we can just keep them on that plate to the side and then throw them back in the pan when we're ready. I'm gonna take mine out in like a minute. And then we can get started on our sauce. All right, I'm gonna start taking these meatballs out and just placing them on that plate. All right, and then we're leaving our pan on because we're gonna do our sauce in the same pan. So the first thing we're gonna want to add, we just wanna move kind of quickly since the pan is hot. We're gonna do a half stick of butter and the remaining garlic from earlier that we minced. So I'm just cutting my butter. Getting that in the pan. And like I said, I have that frozen garlic that I'm using, so I'm just adding that, but you want to use that remaining garlic that we minced earlier. Then I'm just gonna start stirring this around. My pan's a little hot, so I'm gonna lower it.
So you already put a half stick of butter, right?
Half stick of butter, right? And the
And what
remaining
else you
garlic
put
that
in
we
there?
minced earlier.
Minced earlier?
Remember the garlic that we chopped earlier?
So that's what it looks like, this cube thing that you also put in there?
Say that again?
This cube-like thing that you also put in there?
So that's just what I had was some frozen garlic, so that's why mine looked like that.
Let me get this one. All right, well, my
I didn't
dad's
have
gonna
enough
put it
fresh
in
garlic
right
on
now,
hand,
I
so that's
believe.
just why mine looked like a cube.
Yeah, it's okay. This is gonna be
All right,
great.
so after the butter, we want to add 1 tablespoon of flour. So we're gonna whisk that in. I'm just gonna take this off the heat really quick while I grab my flour because I don't want it to burn. All right, so we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of flour and then you're gonna wanna whisk it together so that the flour kind of combines with everything else. So I'm gonna add that right in there and then whisk. Looks like the consistency should get a little bit thicker. I'm gonna add a little more. Just because normally it gets. If it gets really thick, that's also totally fine. Because we're gonna be adding some chicken stock, which is gonna help loosen it up afterwards. And with my whisk, I'm just trying to loosen up those bits that were stuck to the pan. The chicken broth is gonna help with that too. Just to kind of loosen them a little bit. All right,
So
so
you didn't put the chicken broth in there, is it?
the chicken broth is not in yet. Nope, that's gonna be our next one.
You got it.
All right, so once all your flours combined and your mixture is starting to look like this, a little dark brown, we're gonna wanna do the 1 cup of chicken broth. So I have my liquid measuring cup right here. Just gonna do 1 cup of that. And now that we're adding stuff in, I'm gonna turn my heat back up a little bit too. If you didn't turn it down at all before, then you can leave it. I just didn't want the butter to burn. So I'm gonna whisk in that chicken broth. Right. So now we've got a nice sauce starting to form. Once everyone has your chicken broth added in, give me a thumbs up. Like we're all doing good. Awesome. I know this part is moving a little bit quick, but everyone's doing great. And then next we're going to want to do the capers and the caper brine, which is that liquid that's in the jar with the capers. So you want to do a 1/4 cup of capers and 2 tablespoons of the liquid. I'm going to stop mixing quick. If at any point your sauce seems to look too thick, you can always add some more chicken broth to loosen it up again. All right, so I'm just gonna pour the liquid into my tablespoon right here, right over the pan. I'm gonna do 1.
Only liquid, right?
Only liquid right now. Then we are gonna add the capers in 2, but for the liquid, you wanna do 2 tablespoons of just the liquid.
2 tablespoons of just the liquid, not 1/4 of a cup.
The 1/4 of a cup is the capers that are inside. See those little ball-like things? So we're gonna do a 1/4 cup of those and then 2 tablespoons of just the liquid.
Yes.
And then now I'm gonna use a spoon to get some of those capers out. And spoon them into my quarter cup. If you get a little extra liquid, that's totally fine too. All right, so I've got a quarter cup of the actual capers, gonna add that in. And then gonna give it a whisk again.
Uh, Sophia, what do we
Yes.
do now?
So next we're gonna do a quarter cup of lemon juice. So all those lemons that we squeezed earlier, we're gonna grab that bowl again. I'm gonna pour it into my liquid measuring cup to do 1/4 cup.
Okay.
Mine happens to be all of my lemon juice. Just gonna add that right in. And then make sure you just whisk everything
Oh,
all
actually,
together.
Sophia, actually is a 4th cup of lemon juice, not the capers for the solid stuff and stuff.
No, you wanna do both.
Oh, 'cause
So
I
it's a
thought we
4th
were gonna
cup
need
of,
this to
it's
put
a,
it in there.
Enrique,
Yeah,
4th cup of the capers, which are the little balls in there.
the
It's
little
2
balls and the liquid.
the liquid, you're gonna do just 2 tablespoons.
I know, it's just that I was just trying to put the balls in there.
If you want, you could try and use a spoon to get them out. If a little liquid comes out with them, that's okay too. Don't worry
Yes.
about that. And then
It is
after that,
and then the lemon. Okay.
you're gonna do 1/4 cup of lemon juice, okay?
You got it. Thank you, Sophia.
You're welcome. All right, so the sauce is boiling, well, not boiling, but simmering nicely. It's starting to thicken up a little bit, which is exactly what we want. If you've got everything added into your sauce, you can go ahead and add those meatballs back in now. I'm just gonna take my plate and shimmy them in there. So now the sauce will cook nicely with the meatballs and finish the chicken. And we'll just let these cook together for a few minutes.
So once again, I should put this and the lemon juice in the bowl, right? With
Into the
sauce?
pan where the sauce
Into
is
the pan,
cooking.
yeah?
Into the pan, yep.
All right, got it, thanks. And then mix together with the meatballs, right?
Yep.
All right, got it, thank you.
You got it, Enrique. Right, so we let this cook every once in a while. Just give it a little stir. And these should be done shortly. And then you can eat these by themselves. You can have them over some pasta. I usually like to make sure I have a vegetable with it too. We'll give them one more minute. They should be good. Does everyone have their meatballs in the pan with the sauce? Awesome. Okay. So we'll give that another minute or so. You can always check to see if the meatballs are done if you have a thermometer on hand. You want to make sure they're 165 in the middle. Mine are almost there. I'm gonna add just a little splash of chicken broth. The sauce is thickening how it should be, but just to give it a little extra something. Let's give it one more stir. Does anyone have any questions before we wrap up for today? All right, good. Are our meatballs at a point where we can try and take a picture with them? If not, we don't have to put the meatballs in the picture. We could just take a picture all together. I'm probably gonna use a oven mitt and hold my pot up. Or if you want to put a couple on a plate, you could do that too. All right, so we're gonna take this picture in just a minute and then everyone can get going. I don't want to keep you guys too long. Okay, let me get set up. Let me see everyone's meatballs. I see some on plates. Oh, they look delicious. Awesome, everyone. All right. I'm gonna get ready to do a picture. I'll count us down, okay? So if you want to be in it, or if you want your meatballs in it, make sure you've got them. Ready? 3, 2, 1, smile. Perfect. All right. Thank you everyone for coming. I hope you like your meatballs. If you have them for lunch or dinner or one day this week. If they need to cook a little more, you can always just leave them on that stove, all right? I'll see you guys next month, okay?
All right, you got it.
Bye.
See
Thank
ya, Sophia.
you.
See ya to someone who said
Bye.
hi, Brad. See ya.